Dear friends in Jesus Christ, today we are in the 17th Sunday of Ordinary Time, Year B. The Gospel passage of today is the account of the feeding of the 5,000. Apart from the Passion narrative, this is the only passage that we see in all the four Gospels. We have the Gospel passage from the Gospel of St. John, chapter 6, verses from 1 to 15. This miracle story is the beginning of the discourse on the bread of life in this chapter. For the next 5 Sundays, we will have the Gospel reading from this chapter alone. The miracle of the multiplication of the loaves is not a new miracle that happened at the time of Jesus. The first reading of today from the second book of Kings, we see another story of the multiplication of loaves. A man from Baal Shalisha brought food from the first fruits to prophet Elisha. Elisha commanded that the food to be given to the people. Though the man hesitated, upon the insistence of prophet Elisha, the food was distributed to the people. For their surprise, they had some left over after having eaten by the hundreds of people. Bible scholars find a strong literary connection between these stories of the multiplication of loaves. First, food is brought. Second, the amount of food is specified. Third, it is objected that the quantity is inadequate to be distributed. Fourth, the objection is ignored. Fifth, it was commanded to distribute the food to the people. Sixth, finally, the crowd not only had enough to eat, but there was some left over. Thus, the familiar miracle of Jesus has a similar miracle as its background. But there are also few differences. The crowd was big in the New Testament miracle. Contrary to the man, a boy is mentioned in the New Testament miracle. Contrary to the food from the first fruits, loaves of barley, a cheap food, or the food of the poor is mentioned in the New Testament miracle. In the New Testament miracle, it is said that the leftover was gathered in 12 baskets. What do we learn from this miracle? First of all, the usage of the words, Jesus took the bread, gave thanks, and gave them to the disciples, echo the Last Supper scene. St. John does not have the account of the Last Supper in his Gospel, but gives the elements of the Last Supper in this miracle. John also mentions clearly that this miracle takes place very close to the feast of the Passover of Jews. It will be more clear when we continue to read the passage after this miracle, which we will have in the following Sundays. Thus, this passage talks about the Last Supper, the Eucharist. This miracle also tells us that Jesus is always concerned of his people and he is compassionate. God knows our needs. We also learn from this miracle that Christ uses the insignificant people with inadequate resources. The boy was not even counted among the 5,000. He was not even considered to be numbered, but Christ used him. The barley loaves and the pickled fish are food of the poor. 5 loaves and 2 fish are nothing for the great crowd, but Christ used them. Christ used those insignificant people. Christ used those inadequate resources. This miracle also tells us once again that when God gives, He gives abundantly. His blessings are countless. He gives everything abundantly and He gives always abundantly. This may seem that Jesus gave them bread to sustain their physical life. But, dear brothers and sisters, when we continue to read the passage further, we know that this is the beginning of receiving the bread of eternal life. Thus, we need to come to the Lord, that is enough. The compassionate Lord will take care of us. Thus, Jesus gives us a spiritual food to sustain our whole self. This we are reminded by the refrain of the responsorial psalm of today. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs. Amen.